Hello, high side, low side listening audience. I am your host, Spurgeon Dunbar, and I am joined, of course, by my lovely and handsome co-host, Zachary Quartz. We have got a heck of a show in store for you for Season 6, Episode 6. We have a Not the News episode that Zach and I are going to discuss where we talk about the next big motorcycle manufacturer. And the topic for today's episode is going to be about track day etiquette. What do you do? What don't you do? We are joined by Jen Dunstan for this episode. We're going to have Jen stick around, and she will play the Rev Trivia Engine guessing game with you and with Zach and with myself. And then we're going to round things out. We are going to pick a t-shirt winner for the best review on Apple Podcast. And, of course, we will round out the show by discussing listeners' comments. This is emails and comments that have been left by you, the high side, low side listening audience, for Zach and I to discuss, dissect, and sometimes argue about. But we always argue about it in front of you so you don't feel like you're left out. But before we do any of that, we need a word from our sponsor, Motul.
Time to drop a little Motul knowledge on you, everybody. Did you know that in 1953, Motul launched the world's first multi-grade motor oil? I was struck by that date because 1953 is the same year my dad was born, and he's been complaining a lot about being old lately. And I don't think he listens to this podcast, so I don't think he'll mind me saying it. The point is, Motul has been making multi-grade motor oil for quite some time, and also sponsoring High Side, Low Side for quite some time. Not since 1953. But almost, it feels like. To learn more about Motul products, go to RevZilla.com/Motul. That's MOTUL.
We are back, Zach, for another high side, low side podcast attack. How do you like that?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Spurgeon Dunbar, rapper on the side, everybody. Hopefully, you're happy to have the Zach attack back in the studio here. How was hosting an episode without me, Spurge?
It was lonely.
Don't say that.
It was lonely. I missed you. But I will say that Spencer Robert, while almost as handsome as you, was a lovely co-host. He stepped in. He filled your big shoes almost as well as you filled them. And I would say it is ultimately, though, good to have you back on the show. How are things with you? How has the last few weeks been?
Just fantabulous. Mostly, though, I would like to talk about gas.
I think that's where the entire public would like to go.
Yes.
The high side, low side listening public. So Zach is alluding to the fact that our Not the News topic for today, and if you remember, Not the News is our segment where we talk about something that is news related, news adjacent, we would call it, right? Because we understand that this podcast is sometimes recorded a bit out of line with when things are most topical, as you can tell by the Christmas and holiday and Hanukkah decor behind me right now, because we are actually shooting a holiday video at the moment.
Right. For those of you listening to the podcast and not watching on the YouTubes, Spurgeon is surrounded by Christmas spirit and Christmas trees and menorahs and you name it. Holiday cheer, you might say. Mm-hmm. And my air conditioner is on. So it gives you an idea of where we're at as far as recording this episode. Anyway, for the love of Pete, let's jump into what we're talking about, Spurge. So,
okay,
who is Gas and why are they going MotoGP racing? This is a story that Jen Dunstan wrote for the Common Tread blog, and it provoked some thought from Spurge and I. We thought we would present a sort of synopsis of Jen's article and then something to think about when it comes to motorcycle manufacturing.
So the long and short of it is Gas is historically was a Spanish motorcycle manufacturer founded in the 1980s. They specialized in mostly trials and enduro bikes. It is a brand that has since been brought back into the fold by KTM, or the KTM group rather, which is it Perrier Mobility?
I think it's Perrier, maybe?
Perrier Mobility AG.
Jen will know.
Okay.
We can ask her.
But that's essentially it's the KTM group. So now it's the main brands under the KTM umbrella are KTM, Husqvarna, and Gas. So that is the long and short of who Gas is in the modern era. The article is about Gas creating a MotoGP team. And Zach, what are your thoughts around that?
Well, so the quick synopsis there is that Gas as its own entity did not create a MotoGP motorcycle. That's led to some confusion among my motorcycling acquaintances and friends. That's sort of like, wow, they just built a MotoGP bike. No, it is a KTM MotoGP bike, which has existed for many years now, and it has been painted red, and the words gas have been put on the side of it. Same thing that's been going on in road racing elsewhere. There's a gas Moto 3 team, for example, which is 250cc bikes that KTM has been building for a little while, and the gas ones are just red KTMs. So that's the sort of short story there. The gas MotoGP bike is just a red KTM, but it does speak, we think, do we not, Spurge, to a sort of a larger theme in how the KTM group is setting up its product line, and it's a little bit atypical in the motorcycle world.
Yeah, and I think, it's easier to probably look at this, sticking with the lens for MotoGP for a second. One of the biggest critiques that KTM has suffered in the past was, you have this MotoGP racing team, and you don't have some kind of crazy horsepower super sport motorcycle to sell. You have Super Duke, and you've got these other big V twins, but you don't have, the RC8, for example, was removed from showroom floors, and you don't have these race replica motorcycles. And one of the arguments that Jen makes in her article is she talks about the fact that, in a lot of areas of the world where MotoGP is popular, there are the little 150 and the 250 and the smaller race replica style bikes, the RC390 being almost like the king of the mountain, while we think about that as a beginner bike. In America, in other markets, that's actually a pretty powerful and potent motorcycle. Yep. So I think, part of their reasoning for getting into MotoGP is to help that identity and affinity for some of the smaller entry-level bikes that they can then sell in markets much bigger than the United States.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. And if you have traveled places outside the United States, you'll know that you see, little 110cc Yamaha scooters with Valentino Rossi graphics on them, and little Suzuki motorcycles that are too small to sell in the United States that have Suzuki MotoGP paint jobs, and the list goes on. So the sort of brand awareness and the footprint of MotoGP is large. But to pivot away from that for a second here, Spurge, I think it's interesting that in the automotive world you see you see Toyota, and then Toyota has Lexus, right? And they had Scion for a while also, just as a Toyota brand. And then in the apparel world, there's there's Gap, and then there's Old Navy, and there's Banana Republic, and those are different brands that are the same company, right? And I think I'm maybe oversimplifying this. I'm not a commerce expert, but the point is, it's interesting that in motorcycling you don't really see that, and it kind of occurs to me that that's what KTM's approach is here, kind of, right? I mean, and the bikes are very, very similar. If you've ridden a KTM 350 EXC and then a Husqvarna, FE350, they're pretty similar motorcycles. And I mean, you pop the seat off a Husqvarna and you see a KTM fuse box. It's like they're not even really trying to hide what's going on there. But I do think the differentiation in brand does offer some sort of mobility in the market that other companies are missing out on.
Yeah, I think that, it allows you to identify with a certain motorcycle's aesthetic a little bit more, and not feel like you're missing out on the performance. We get into conversations a lot between KTM and Husky, as it relates to like an 890 versus an Norden, right? And like the difference is there, and some people just gravitate towards something that looks a little bit more like a motorcycle and less like a giant praying mantis, ready to attack. So I think there's definitely some styling cues, where, if you talk to, I have a buddy that rides a 350 Husky, and he would not even consider a KTM, right? Like it was just like the blue and the neon yellow and the white was really what he wanted. And I was like, dude, just get a KTM, and he was like, no, I can't do that. So I do think there's a smart play there. I think it's not quite as distinct. And, we've actually seen this in the automotive world, right? Like you mentioned, Honda versus Lexus. It used to be that there was
Toyota and Lexus.
Toyota versus Lexus, right? It used to be that there was a clear price point differentiation. And Honda would be Acura, so
correct, or Nissan and Infiniti, right?
Exactly. But the thing is, you've seen the prices of Toyotas go up so drastically, and they're to the point where they're almost comparable to a Lexus. So what's really happened in the automotive world is that it's not even as much as one is truly luxury and one is not. They just sit in adjacent markets, and if somebody likes the look of a Lexus and a bit more of that refinement, that's what they go with. And
Right.
some people like the Toyota and the squarer lines, if you will.
So you should just, if you want a Lexus badge on your Tacoma, Spurge, just do it. We're fine with it. We support you.
You've found me out. That's what I've been pining for, is the Lexus logo on my Tacoma.
Just to let people know that you fancy. Anyway, that I think largely concludes the news segment.
The one thing that I did want to hit on, because
there's one more thing that Spurge wanted to hit on.
Yeah, the aspect here is that, I like to pull out data, right? And I think that there's something to be said for really what KTM is doing, not just with Gas, but with their brand as a whole. Because I was recently looking at two pieces of information, and I'll keep this quick, Zach, but there was a Vital survey that went out to, Vital is a media company, and they sent out a survey to their MX subscribers for Vital MX, and they looked at 10 years of data from 2012 up to 2022. And really what we're seeing is a drop-off, and this is one little anecdotal piece of data, but we see this reflected in other areas too. But on the motocross side of things, the big four, which have traditionally, we're talking about Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki, have traditionally owned a large portion of the MX world. Their numbers have been dropping over the past 10 years, with the exception of Yamaha, which has stayed flat, whereas KTM has gone from 15% of the market share of this survey up to 21%, and that's just for the KTM brand. When you factor in KTM, Husky, and Gas, it's over 30% of market share is now owned by the KTM brand, and Gas essentially has increased by 300% over the past year. I think it was from an ownership, or nearly 300% over the past year in ownership. So you are seeing this Gas brand, have a tremendous spike in ownership. And the other piece of data, anecdotally, and I'll leave it at this, was we had talked about, I had done a race a couple weeks back at this point, and when I got the spreadsheet for like all the different entries, there was over 300 entries. Over 70% of the people racing in the East Coast Enduro Association, at least registering for these races that I was able to find, are racing either a KTM, a Husky, or a Gas. And that's something that you just wouldn't have seen. You wouldn't have seen that 10 years ago. And it's interesting to see what that's going to mean for the KTM brand, if they're onto something by having their line differentiated with these three different brands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So hopefully that provokes some thought. Do you think that, say, Kawasaki or Ducati should have sub-brands? Would that help them? Talk amongst yourselves. Send us an email, please. Highside, lowside at RevZilla.com.
What's the accent? What are we doing here?
So no idea.
Okay.
It's a vacuum cleaner from Long Island. Well, speaking of what is Gas and what is it doing and why is it red, we should probably bring in Jen Dunstan to talk about, the author of that very article on Common Tread, to talk about track day etiquette and maybe get a little bit of insight on how to pronounce Pereire.
There you go.
There she is, Jen Dunstan. Thanks for joining us, Jen.
It's my pleasure. I'm so excited to be back on the show, guys.
All
well,
right.
We feel like we have an episode that'll be right up your alley. We are going to be talking about track day etiquette today. And just to kind of, sorry, Zach has his finger up.
But first, how do you say the last name of the KTM Group CEO?
Pierre, I think.
Is it
Stefan
Pierre? Pierre? Okay. All right. We were arguing about it in the previous segment.
What did I say?
You said Perrier, which I think is water.
Pierre.
That'd be the water.
That's Perrier.
Fair enough.
And I know that because I'm an avid drinker of fancy glass bottled water.
That should be their new branding campaign. Francie water from Fance. Anyway, I think my guess was Perrier, but whatever. If you just, I think the point is here, everyone, if you're into motorcycles,
the KTM group.
Exactly. And if you just give it an effort, I'm sure he'll appreciate it. But that's good to know because we wanted to hear it from your mouth, Jen, since you're more familiar with KTM group hierarchy.
And very quickly,
are.
how do you feel? So I saw this in a comment that you had made back at me. So how do you feel the hierarchy within the KTM lineup goes between KTM, Husqvarna, and Gas?
From when I was there, from like a branding and also price point, Husqvarna is considered the more premium brand, and it is always a little bit more pricier than the other two brands. KTM's in the middle there, even though, they're very high performance machines too, but they're always a little bit cheaper than the Husqvarna. And the Gas, they do swap out some components to make it more cost effective, and they are a little bit cheaper than the KTM's.
So do you think it's fair to say that KTM is Gap, Husqvarna is Banana Republic, and Gas is Old Navy?
Yeah, I guess you could do it that way.
Nice.
Totally.
Okay. I'm running with it. I'm sure someone at KTM has just put their, face in their palm. But
yeah, so would just spit their drink out.
Exactly. Good stuff. All right. Well, speaking of dirt bikes, to a certain extent, as Spurgeon said, we're going to talk about track day etiquette today. Spurgeon, I cut you off about 3 minutes ago, so you should.
I was just going to say we're gonna kind of reference this into street track days as well as off-road track days,
yes,
and try and really demystify some of this. And I think there's a lot of our listeners that have written in over the years talking about how they've wanted to do a first track day or they've tried their first track day. We've got some content out there already that we can reference to throughout the podcast episode. But really, we just wanted to have a discussion amongst the three of us, and Jen being an avid track day attendee, both on the street as well as off-road. And then Jen, you also, volunteer and work behind the scenes at a couple of different track day organizations. So we figured this would be a great episode to kind of just work through so that the audience feels a little bit more comfortable, hopefully, by the time things are said and done, where they might want to go out and try a track day on their own.
Or if you already go to track days, maybe you'll learn a thing or two about etiquette and how things are supposed to go.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah, we're gonna tell you how to be a better person. Is the theme here?
That's
life coaching from Spurgeon Zack.
Right.
Oh no. This is all Jen. Like we get to throw our hands back and say Jen said it, not me.
Okay. So to kick things off, and I think guest honors as usual. Tell the listeners about your first track day, Spurgeon, Jen, and I guess we'll start with Jen. That makes sense.
Sure. And Zack, it's funny you kick off this question.
I know.
Because I can't believe we found that photo and we found out you were actually there for my first track day.
I
and
was.
We hadn't met each other
Wow.
and know of each other. Yeah, it's hilarious.
Do we have that photo? Are we going to get our editors to put it up on the screen so that everybody can see?
I think so. It's somewhere, right?
It's somewhere on Facebook, so I'll dig through that
Yeah,
and try and
okay,
find it
okay.
because that's where we found it. We're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
We were both there.
Was
So
it
do you
like
remember how old
was it
you
like
were?
a group photo?
No, it's a photo of Jen, and I'm just in the background.
Ha!
Right?
Yeah, you're so our mutual friend Carrie Smith was also taking her first track day there. We're all getting ready to start racing vintage bikes. And so you were in the background there, and I think you were, giving her some bits of advice or whatever. So it was my friend taking a photo of me, and you and Carrie just happened to be in the background of the photo. So it's crazy. But yeah, that was my first track day. It was back in I think 2007. And it was a new rider school for the vintage club. So all of us were getting ready to get licensed to race our vintage bikes together.
And what
that was my first track day.
What track was this?
Loudon. This is at Loudon, New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and was that your first? Had you ever been to an off-road track day at that point? No, because off-road riding came later for you. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so just making sure that's first track day for you. And
Can you speak to any emotions like when you like thinking back to your first track day? Was had your parents gone to track days before? Or was this like something new for all of you? Like what was going through your head as you attended your first track day?
Great question.
It was also new. Basically I'd met my coworker and watched them race, and that's when the idea was sprung. Oh, I should be a racer too. And so I spent like the whole winter getting the bike, getting the used gear, like getting involved with the club, and then finally, so I'd only been to the track once before as a spectator on like a Labor Day race weekend. And then that following spring, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go racing. Well, why not? It's how hard can it be,
Why
right?
not me?
Yes. I showed
great.
up in that spring, and it's all brand new gear for me anyway. It was actually like hand-me-down gear, but never been in a leather suit before, never ridden this bike before, and never been on any track. Certainly not this one.
And it was
Before.
wet that day, if memory serves.
Yeah, of course it rained. It's loud.
Yeah.
If any of our New Englander listeners are tuning in, they know it's probably 70% chance of rain every time you head out to Loudon. So.
Yeah, especially in the spring. Yeah.
And then leaving that day, how did you feel after your first track day?
I felt so accomplished just to be on track, to be honest with you guys. Like leading up to it, I was pretty nervous. It's if you've never been on track before, it is a little bit scary and weird, and like I kept trying to like treat it like a road and make sure I'm riding on the right side of the road on the track, and these poor instructors are like trying to corral me like where I need to be, and it was like almost follow the leader the entire day, which I probably really needed because I didn't know what I was doing. And like that last session of the day, they kind of let us out, and to ride completely alone without being like handheld at all on the track, it was like, yes, I'm actually doing it, but also where'd this turn go? Which line am I on? Like it was still like a lot of confusion. But like there's photos of me coming in, and like you can see my whole smiling face in my helmet because it's way too big for me. So there's just so much learned on that first track day, but I'm so glad I did it that way with a vintage club that much slower paced, way more chill. The USCRA is such a friendly group, so they really make you feel like you do belong, even if you're as slow and timid as I was on that day.
What's the US? So for our listeners that might not know, /Spurgeon Dunbar, right. What's the USCRA?
It's the United States Classic Racing Association.
There we go.
Right. Also, the United States Calf Roping Association, in case you're looking for the website, can be a little bit tricky sometimes for those looking for the racing website. So, Spurge, your first track day experience.
Yeah, I'm glad that Jen mentioned the learning experience around like treating it like a track versus a street, and I think we'll probably hit on that a little bit more later. But that was like, I think that was probably the biggest learning curve for me, was understanding that like you can use the whole track. You have this whole wide, amazing piece of asphalt, and you don't. There's no traditional road rules. There's etiquette rules that you have to follow, and there's certain rules of the organization, but they're completely different than what you would get, cruising down the 405. For you Californians out there, I threw out a road that you'd be familiar with. Sure. So my first track day was at Barber in Alabama. It was, I didn't start until a little bit later. So I know, Jen, you were probably in your teens. Is that about when you started? 20s?
No. I started straight after college. It was like
after
my
college,
first year
okay.
after graduating college, yeah.
Okay. So then, Zach,
you didn't
I knew
graduate
you were
college when you were 19? What's wrong with you? And I forget what our relationship is with age. I think I'm a couple years older than you are. So because I don't actually remember. I would have guessed that you were like 18 or 19 at that track day too. I didn't realize that I was whatever age I was. 25.
I was of drinking age. There was beer waiting in the coolers.
Nice. So anyway, Spurge, you didn't start till later.
I got started later. I think I was about 20. I want to say 27 when I did my first track day. I was working for a dealership in Nashville at the time, and I had an opportunity to go down to Barber for this Triumph event. And after the event was over, it was during Vintage Week. I got to stay after, and I got to ride a couple of the Triumph prepped Thruxton Cup series, and that was my first track day. And I rode a couple of sessions on each day, and I later came to find out that I believe, Zach, that was the same year that you were down there doing an article for Motorcyclists at the time, riding and or racing a Thruxton. So it sounds like, Jen, maybe you and I have that in common, that both of our first track days had a Zach Quartz in the periphery.
Yeah,
that's insane. I love
that.
that.
That's really weird that I was in orbit in both cases. But yeah, I think Triumph was the not the Grand Marshal, but like the sponsoring brand of the Barber Motorsport Park Barber Vintage Days Festival, whatever it's called, in the fall of that year. And I think that was 2013. Yeah, it was 2013. that I went there and raced a Thruxton in the Thruxton Cup. And then I remember actually that Triumph was sort of like, oh, you can stick around. There's a track day on Monday and Tuesday or something like that. And Ari and I were like, wow, we already took like a week off work because we had Ari and I rode a Thruxton and a Bonneville from New Orleans to Barber. We had road tripped 2 street bikes from New Orleans along the Gulf Coast to Mobile, Alabama, and then from Mobile up to Barber. And then I raced in the Thruxton Cup, and I wrote a whole story about riding the street bike and then riding the race bike, and I don't know, wax poetic about vintage bikes or something. I don't remember.
So if yours was 2013, then I stand corrected because I was there in 2012. So
really?
Triumph owned that series, I think, for 3 years in a row. So you might have had the same experience, but I was already working for RevZilla in 2013. So 2012 would have been the year that I was there.
Well,
either way,
now
it's
I gotta
interesting.
check the internet and see what.
Long story
we need
short,
photo evidence, guys, that Zack was there.
Exactly.
yeah, my first track day, I had rode a Bonneville from Nashville, Tennessee, down to Alabama, and then had an opportunity to spend 2 days riding adventure. They had like a little off-road course set up to try the new Tigers out, and then we got to do track days with the Thruxton Cup bikes, and it was great. It was a really, like, to Jen's point, they had people to kind of show you the lines. I was in way over my head, and it was one of those ones where, like, I think my biggest takeaway from that track day was like, I want to do this again. Like, I want to go faster. I want to understand what I'm doing wrong. It was a learning experience in how much I didn't know and how, inexperienced I was when it came to going fast on a racetrack. And it was like this whole new world of, like, I thought I was pretty good on a motorcycle, but here's a whole new element that, like, I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was. I thought I was going to get out on the track and it was going to be like just riding faster than on the street, but on a track. And man, it's a different world when you start getting up into some of those higher speeds and the bikes are more capable. It really does. It really does add a perspective to that. And to Jen's point, I'm glad that my first was on a Thruxton because I think that bike, even when hopped up form, makes like 70 horsepower. It wasn't anything crazy. So
not super fast for sure.
So what about you, Zach?
Right.
Sorry, I just wanted to turn it back around to you giving us your first track day experience.
Yeah. And I don't actually, what's sad, you guys? Can I make a confession? I don't remember. I don't.
You've done so many track days over the year that the first one is just blurred into oblivion.
Well, no, I mean, I recall I have some sort of vignette. I have some memories of going racing for the first time, and I remember like taking the school. I took Penguin School at Loudon, at NHIS way back then.
What's NHIS?
New Hampshire International Speedway. And then it was NHMS, New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Yeah. Colloquially, it's Loudon because it's near the town of Loudon, New Hampshire, and that's what people call it. Anyway, so I remember taking the school and racing, and I don't think I did a track day before I raced. I think I just kind of jumped in because my dad started racing when I was 2 or 3 or something like that. So I grew up at the track, and that's what some people know. That's how I met Ari. Ari's dad raced also, so we were 6, 8, 10 years old, little track rats running around causing trouble. So I had grown up just wanting to race. There was never really any question in my mind that I would do that. If I had the opportunity, I was absolutely going to take it. So I remember starting racing, and even growing up, watching racing and watching my dad race and talking about racing and having people tell me, about it, and I feel like I soaked in so much stuff about racing, and I knew what all the flags meant, and I knew what the line around the track was, and I was as prepared as any young man could be, I think, young person I should say, to go on the track. And but certainly I still remember being very intimidated. I remember doing my rookie race, the first ever race that you do normally in a race organization, where you do the school and then you get your racing license, provided you're not a complete menace to everyone on the track. And then you do what they call a rookie race. And it's usually like 3 laps long. It's not a real race. It's sort of like a mock race where they throw a green flag and you go, and then 2 laps later they throw a white flag, and then they throw a checkered flag, and you go through the whole thing where you pit out and you grid up and you learn the flags and you know what to do. And then, as provided you don't make a complete hash of that, they say, okay, we now dub you a racer, and now you can enter actual races and compete against people. And I remember being horribly nervous. I mean, I was like, I'm going to get run over. I don't know what, I just don't know how this is going to go.
And you had never done a track day before that. Like you jumped into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I mean, technically, when I raced sidecars with my dad, I was unlicensed. I had never taken a school at all. I just got on a sidecar and started racing. So I had actually, by the time I had done my rookie race or done, my first track session, I had already taken a checkered flag and taken a green flag and done races. But I was a sidecar monkey, so I was technically not in control of the vehicle, but I was a crucial part of the racing outfit.
So,
I had to know what the flags
how old
meant
was that? Like how old were you?
I was 15
when you started monkeying.
When I started sidecar racing, yeah, because you were supposed to be 16, and for some reason my dad cheated on that, or let me start a year early. And then the next spring, when I was 16, I was allowed to start actually racing, and he bought me a little 125 race bike, and I started.
He was a man born in 1953, back when rules didn't apply, as we learned about earlier.
Back before multi-grade oil and before rules. Yeah, and I mean, I ended up racing when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever, I remember I raced against a 14-year-old, and the dad told me that he had forged a birth certificate to say that he was 16 so that he could start racing. Yeah, it was crazy. No, my dad didn't take it that far. He just sort of fudged it with the sidecar monkeying and was like, you can get on the bike a little early. But the point of all this is not my autobiography, but rather I was pretty nervous hitting the track for the first time, and I was very prepared, all things considered. I had years and years to soak in all of the rules and etiquette by osmosis at the very least, and it still was intimidating, which it sounds like you guys can represent with.
So if nothing else, I think the takeaway here for the audience is, regardless of who you are now or who you want to be later, your first track day is going to be an intimidating experience, no matter how prepared you are. And I think, some of this is like, you just have to do it. You just have to pull the Band-Aid off and show up and give it a try. And honestly, I think that getting there is the hardest part. I know we talked about this, Jen and Zach and I were talking about this recently with, when I went and did my first off-road race. Getting there was 75% of it. Like just getting there, was so much of getting over the nerves. And once you're there and you're walking around and you're talking to people, it all just kind of fades away, and it's so simple. And I think track days are like that too. Driving in and unloading your bike is the hardest part. Once you're walking around and you're talking to people, like everybody's super nice, everybody's super inviting for the most part, and it ends up just getting over that initial hump. Everything just kind of fades away and becomes simpler afterwards.
So I do want to take a quick step back, because I want to that's the topic that I want to dive into. But before we talk about the sort of like barriers of entry, for those that don't know, we've been talking about all of our first track days were road track days, sport bike track days, more or less. Jen was on a vintage bike. Spurgeon was on a Thruxton. So not full on sport bikes, not on, R6s or anything, but this was a sport bike track day. It was a large pavement racetrack where you ride around and go as fast as you can, and you drag your knee if you're lucky, so on and so forth. But there are other kinds of track days you can do too, not least of which motocross track days, which is they're in Southern California are a pretty big thing. They're MX tracks, practically everywhere, and you can go and pay a fee and ride around. And so Jen, maybe just really quickly, talk about your first motocross track day. Just to as how that differed from the street one.
Yeah, actually, so that first track day did happen in Massachusetts, so still while I was on the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
And Alex brought me out for my first experience ever on a dirt bike at Crow Hill MX. And I got to say, like, there's photos from that, but I wouldn't say I remember all that was involved for getting in there and getting set up and riding. It was really, It was all just about me, like, trying dirt for the first time.
Yeah.
But I would say living here in Southern California, and that's where, like, my most embedded memories are of first going to the MX track. And I think especially too, because out here the tracks are so much busier. There's so many more of them to choose from. There's like a lot more that could go wrong for a new rider at these bigger and more complex tracks. So I like my memories of really formulating as a dirt bike rider on a motocross track is at Paula MX here in like San Diego area. and we would come out and ride here. And I would say like my biggest takeaways from that was it's a very humbling experience when you're a full-grown adult and you have all these years of street riding on your belt, and you've got to go on the Pee-wee track. You're like, it's called what? The Pee-wee track. I'm like, oh my God, like really? And you're out there, with 8-year-olds who are so much better than you. I'm like, how is this possible? It was like a really like sit down and pay attention moment for me, because I didn't realize how much gap there was in my knowledge as a rider. It's generally speaking,
Right.
I had like 8 or 9 years of street experience. I've been racing on the East Coast. I started racing here on SoCal on sport bikes. I'm on my CBR 600. I'm kind of a big deal now in my head, right? And I go to the dirt bike track, and literally you get roosted in the face. Like, it's such a humbling experience to have an 8-year-old carve the corner in front of you. You're like, wow, how are they doing that? And then they get on the gas and just like shovels of dirt just like flying in your face. And
Literally
like, wow.
throw dirt in your face.
So dirt biking is such a humbling but rewarding experience. And at the motocross track, there's a lot more you need to know, and I would say not as much structure as a traditional road racing circuit has.
Right.
So I was fortunate to have my husband Alex there to be my shepherd in learning the ways of a dirt bike track, and I'm happy to dive into more of that minutia if we want to talk about it. But I would say my first dirt riding experiences, especially a SoCal track, is like, be humble. Make sure you're on the right track. Don't accident. If you're on a TTR 125 like I am, and you end up on the main track by accident, it's a bad time. It's a bad time. Everyone's so much faster. They might jump and fall on you out of the sky. Like, you're not fast enough to be there. Do not be there. Go back to the Pee-wee track and like really hone your craft and get better.
Well, it's interesting. So I was talking to, we have some people at RevZilla that are much more avid motocross riders than they are, street riders and such. And we have an individual named Rob Kirkpatrick, who's, I would say a close friend of mine at this point. And, we talk a lot about the differences between street and then like trails riding and enduro racing versus MX. And he's thoroughly, MX. And Brandon Wise is someone that spends a lot of time, on an MX track. And I think what's nice is that the cost, the barrier to entry is a lot lower. You can go to an MX day for, here on the East Coast, $25-$35 for a full day of practice versus, a track day that's oftentimes north of 200. And then, I know that Jen's referring to it as a Pee-wee track, but it's like you have the national track, which is like the big, crazy, full on, but then you also have a vet track, and then you have a youth track, and that's kind of what Jen's referring to as Pee-wee. And, I think what's interesting is that if you just want to go out and try your hand at this, it's not about the big jumps and the crazy berms. Like, you can go out and you can just, ride around a youth track and get a feel for it. Or you could try the vet track. You don't have to go out and, hit doubles or triples. And I think that in some ways that is a bit more accessible, because like Jen said, there's not necessarily set, you have a 15-minute slot and you have to be there and you have to be on the track and you have to be ready for the flag. Like, as long as you're entering and exiting the track correctly and taking your time, you can go out there and get a taste for that. And some of the tracks too, like NJMP here on the East Coast, like they've got a trails area too. So like if you want to just go out and warm up on a trail and not even jump onto a track right away, like you have that, as an availability for you as well.
Yeah, so that was one thing I wanted to touch on real quick, is what other kind of track days or, sort of like open non-street or non-competition riding do you think are available? Because I know that, Patrick Garvin does flat track stuff sometimes, right? He goes to flat track track days, right? It's not a race. He just sort of rides around, and maybe there's a race at the end of the day or something like that. But the structure is different. But those are kind of the two, I think it's pretty safe to say the two main pillars of a quote unquote track day would be motocross or sport bikes. But there's some other ways to get into it. And have you guys ever, the sort of trail system thing that you're talking about is kind of intriguing to me, Spurge. What other stuff in that sort of orbit have you heard of or tried?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that, for the two of you in Southern California, I think it's important to note that depending on where you live, as you're listening to this podcast, I think it's like something like over 80% of all BLM land, Bureau of Land Management, open land, is west of the Mississippi, right? So in the Northeast and on the East Coast, a lot of times, even if we want to go trail ride, Like we have to go to a specific area and either pay or have special permits. We do have like the Pine Barrens in New Jersey. There's actually some stuff going on right now where that is coming under scrutiny, and there's some laws coming down trying to shut some of the trail riding down in the Pine Barrens. In the state of Pennsylvania, we really only have one state forest that has dual sport trails where you're allowed to ride, and you're only allowed to ride there if you have a license plate on your bike.
Right.
So the rest of trails riders, really they have to go to private land and they pay a fee, 10 or $15, or they get a season pass for like Famous Reading Outdoors is one in Pennsylvania where it's a series of old quarries and mines that they decided to repurpose for like side-by-side use and for dirt bike use. And there's a series of different trail systems, but you either pay for an annual pass or you pay for a day pass and you can go and you can ride. And it's very similar to what we're talking about, but instead of riding on a track, you have, a system of trails that go all throughout the mountain, and you can just go and ride those trails as much as you want to and practice riding off-road.
Right.
There's
Sure.
There's no competition element to it. And I think that's a difference in what we're talking about too. Like when we're talking about track days, whether it's on or off road, we're not talking about competition. We're talking about practicing and just improving your own skills. You're racing against yourself, if you will, to improve.
Right. So what about you, Jen? Are there other things that come to mind to you as sort of like other types of track days or ways for people to get their feet wet?
Sure. I mean, there's supermoto at go-kart tracks. Depending on where you live, that could be accessible. And I love this conversation. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to be clear, supermoto at kart tracks is a thing, but also don't necessarily think, depending on where you are, that you have to be on a 450 supermoto with slicks to go to the kart track. There are people on mini bikes. There are people
Groms.
Groms. There are people on, the kart track out at Apex there, Jen, you've probably been there. People are on Ninja 400s. There are people out there on CBR 600s sometimes, like they're on full-size bikes, and like it's a little silly to ride a full-size bike around a kart track, but
not advisable.
Like, no, not necessarily, but like if you want to go ride around, it is accessible. You can go ride around a track and like lean over and technically be on a track and sort of experiment, whether it's on a mini bike or a supermoto or your small street bike or whatever. It is possible.
Yeah, so that's another popular avenue, at least around in these parts, because I know there's a lot of opportunity for it. I do love the conversation about like doing track days without having to be a racer or racing.
Yeah.
Because Zach, when we were talking about your initial experiences and also my initial experience, like track days were kind of sort of becoming a thing, but they weren't totally. And so anyone like
Agreed.
before 2008-ish, like if you want to be on like a big road racing circuit, like you needed to get a race license, kind of, like you had to be part of a club, and that was like the way you got on track. And the rise of track days is awesome and really good to see, because not everyone wants to be fully committed to being a club racer and taking that kind of risk. So
Agreed.
Watching the rise of all these track days that are available to regular riders who just want to try it, it's been really cool to see that grow. Like I feel like every year, like there's more organizations doing it. There's more available. There's more like kind of like special programs, and whether it's training or rider education and stuff. So that's really cool, because definitely for you, Zach, back in those days, like it's either you race or you don't ride on the track. So
yeah. And to put it in perspective a little bit, this is such a good point. And now it's really common for track day, sport bike track day organizations to have, there's a classroom session where you learn about flags. There's a new rider school. There are different sessions broken up. They have individual coaching if you want it. There are so many ways to be involved and sort of learn. And, when I started racing in the early 2000s, it wasn't I don't really remember track days being a thing at all. Like you said, I just sort of was like, well, I know I want to race, so I guess this is how I do it, and then, so you're just jumping in. And to take it a step further, when my dad started racing in the early mid 80s, they didn't have there was no delineation in racing. You would just show up and start racing. He just showed up and started racing. There was no school. There was no, he just went out on track. His first time on a track was in practice with professional level riders, like with expert level riders. And he didn't know what he was doing. He just like started riding around. They didn't have any idea. He just like, well, I guess I'm a racer now. And they were like, all right, go for it, buddy. You got numbers on your bike, And he said he remembers getting passed so hard and just being so freaked out by how fast people were going. He just didn't know. But that's how far we've come in the past, few decades, as you point out, Jen. It's now there's so much structure. You don't have to be a racer. You don't even have to want to go fast necessarily to enjoy it. So I think that's a super good point.
And I think even, to take that back to the dirt side of things, I was just messing around with, we had talked about, one of the tracks that we have local here is NJMP. I was actually interested to see that, the prices have gone up to like $50 a day, for an open practice. So they used to be like 25 or 30. So it seems like there's more people. Maybe the demand is higher, but under the one tab, they have classes and schools and instructors that you can take. So like if you show up, you can sign up for like an instruction. If you want to learn how to ride your dirt bike, maybe you buy a dirt bike and you don't want to just go out and jump on a trail and figure it out. They've got courses where you can take like basic skills courses, how to learn body position and how to use, learn cornering and things like that. So I'm all for, I'm a huge proponent of like track days in general as educational tools to improve your riding. And then you can take that improved riding back to your street. Not that you ever want to treat the street like a racetrack, but sometimes the confidence and ability you learn on a racetrack can help you be a stronger rider on the street. So I guess I think I'd like to pivot into the kind of the barrier of entry a little bit. Like we talked about cost and how motocross track day is a lot cheaper than typically a sport bike track day might be, but there's lots of other stuff, right? Like Spurgeon said, getting to the track is sort of some of the highest effort. Yeah, I think the number one,
right? So
the number one thing I'd be interested to hear from the two of you how it worked for you. The number one thing that I hear from people is that like, I would love to do a track day, but I don't have a pickup truck or I don't have a trailer. I don't have a way to get my bike there. And I just want to say that like Lance Oliver, the Silver Fox, the managing editor of Common Tread, one of our famous podcast guests, he still to this day rides his motorcycle to the racetrack, does a track day, and then rides home. So like that is a possibility. But how have the two of you traditionally gotten your motorcycles when you were just starting out? Like go back in time to a younger Jen and a younger Zachary. How did you folks get your motorcycles to the track?
Guest honors, Jen.
Okay. And actually, great call about Lance riding to the track day. Actually, I see that a lot. So for anyone who is worried about how to get their bike to and from, that still is an option, if you want to do that and you haven't dedicated yourself to a track-only bike. Because once you do that, there's no more riding it to the track, as I know very well. But in the early days for me, me and my mom and dad, like we would go to the track together and we had like a small little open trailer that we just roll the vintage bike on and hitch it up. And then we'd put all the tubs of gear or whatever. And like we had like it was some really weird old SUV style kind of vehicle. So we'd pack all our gear in there and that's how we did it. So little open trailers like that are a good option. Like I have a Kendon myself and that saves my bacon a lot for hauling around a lot of big bikes, etc. And but I feel like I've tested almost every method of transporting a bike at some point in my riding career here, like loading 3 bikes into a pickup. We've done that. We've got like a toy hauler now, so we can just cram all the bikes in there and bring our whole like house on wheels out to the track and do it that way. The Kendon trailer has been in heavy rotation for a number of years. I think the only thing we haven't experimented with a ton is like the ride-on hitch that you can just like get a single bike on, because it's never a single bike for us. There's always at least 2 bikes, so that just doesn't work.
Is your motorcycle family?
Yeah. We've always there's at least 2 always. Yeah. So even if it's just me going to the track, I really don't know how this happens, but there's always at least 2.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of options out there, but I would say, there's dangers with a new rider figuring out how to load into a pickup, or pulling a trailer has its own skill set as well. So you're going to need to practice with that thing, or else I've made my share of mistakes with the open trailer. So
true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, to answer your question, Spurge, I've always had infrastructure in my life. Basically, I mean, when I was a kid, when I was young, my dad had vans and trailers, and he was a carpenter, so he always had a truck or a van. And then he was into motorcycles, so he always had a trailer. So he always had a way to move stuff around. And I grew up, learning how to do that stuff. So I was spoiled that way. But to speak to people who are getting into it, now I've seen a lot of people at tracks with a little Volkswagen Golf or a Toyota Prius with a little flat trailer behind it, and it's towing a their hypermotard that has the lights taped up to go to the track, or a Ninja 400 race bike or whatever. It's pretty accessible. And a little flat trailer. The Kendon that Jen mentioned stands up, which is super nice, but they will take up space, and they're cheap, but they're not free. And so, it is another thing. And I've also seen people just rent a pickup truck from U-Haul for the weekend and just sort of like splurge on that and put the bike in the back.
Or the open trailer.
So that's
or
U-Haul actually has a motorcycle trailer, because I was going to make a comment that, like, it sounds like the two of you had parental help when you started doing this. I didn't have that. I was alone in Nashville, Tennessee when I started, trying my hand at this, and even when I moved back to Philadelphia, my first experience was just renting one of those trailers from U-Haul, and it worked out really well. It was like $30 for the day, and I think, to Zach's point, you can go to like the local Harbor Freight or the Tractor Supply store and buy like a little flatbed trailer for not a lot of money, but if you're just starting out and you just want to try it, I think the rental from U-Haul is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, that's a super good call. And I think the other thing that I feel like you probably experienced as well, Jen, that I especially want Spurgeon's take on is to circle back to the barrier entry thing. There are so many other things, right? There's like the nerves of getting on a racetrack, which we talked about. And then there's getting the bike to the racetrack, which we sort of have covered at this point. There's different ways to do that. And obviously there's some risk in riding the bike there and then riding it home in case it all goes pear-shaped. But there's also like tying a bike down in a trailer with tie down. Like, that's not something that is common knowledge in motorcycling. If you've never put a bike on a trailer and lashed it down, there's a technique there. And Jen, you and I kind of grew up learning that from our parents, I think, and we've grown into our own technique with it. But it's like so many things with motorcycles. There's the technique for loading a bike. There's the technique for tying it down. There's thinking about what you need at a track day, whether it's water or chairs or shade, and that stuff is kind of intimidating and tricky. And I know that RevZilla produced a video years ago trying to cover all this stuff, trying to help people. But before you give a synopsis of that, maybe can you speak to learning those aspects of motorcycling, or did you grow up with that sort of general knowledge as well?
No, I learned how to put a motorcycle in a trailer the first time that I had a motorcycle break down on the road. And I think for me it was
Uncle Bob didn't teach you how to tie a motorcycle down?
No, Uncle Bob never. I mean, Uncle Bob.
Bob's bikes don't break down.
Yeah, the bikes he was riding never ended up in the back of a truck or a trailer. He left them for dead on the side of the road. If they broke down, they were dead where they laid. But no, I'm honestly, I was trying to think about this because, like, when I bought my first motorcycle, my brother drove me up to the dealership and dropped me off, and I drove it home. And I would always just ride the bikes back and forth. The first time that I remember having to trailer a motorcycle, I was on, I think it's the 105 that goes through Center City, Los Angeles. Does that sound right? The 110?
10.
No, the one that goes north. It like
north
crosses.
South, 110, yeah.
110.
Yep.
So I was coming down the 110. I only owned a motorcycle at the time. It was my Bonneville. And in front of me, there was a construction truck, and a giant 5-gallon bucket fell off the back. And I was able to swerve, but it hit my left foot, and it broke. It pushed the shifter back in a way that it cracked the back of the engine case, and it put a little crack in there. And I dumped oil everywhere. I got the bike home, but then I had to get the bike down to the dealership, and I borrowed my friend's. He had an old Ford Explorer at the time. Rented a U-Haul trailer and trailered the bike down to, at the time, it was South Bay Triumph. And that was, I mean, I learned how to do it. And it was like, it wasn't rocket science. Like I pushed the bike up into the back of the trailer, and I put the ratchet, I knew how to use ratchet straps. So yeah, I think for me, it was 100% just learning by doing. I didn't have anybody to teach me. And I will say this, now I do not use ratchet straps. I think that tie downs, and some of the
buckle all the way, man.
So much
it's
better.
so much easier. And I think it's interesting because, there's an event called Over and Out, which is a women's off-road motorcycle event. Jen attended one on the West Coast, but the big premier event is on the East Coast. And I always volunteer there in September. And the founder, Kelly, was like, can you do me a favor? Can you teach a class on how to tie a motorcycle down? Because it is a skill that is very intimidating. And every year we see, a lot of these attendees show up with these giant, like industrial ratchet straps used to attach like an F-250 pickup truck back down to the, a car trailer.
Right. Exactly.
And they're trying to get a TT, 225 strapped to a a little lift. And I'm like, whoa, like these, and they're complicated to use. So yeah, a cam buckle strap is an easy alternative that works really well for motorcycling.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, yeah, I guess to mention it yet again, there is a video on the RevZilla channel that Spurge did with Lance the Silver Fox Oliver and another colleague at the time about going to your first track day, right? And
yeah.
What would you say that covers, Spurge?
We have content about how to load a bike in a trailer. We have content about how to load a bike, I think, in a pickup truck. So we have all of that covered. About like we walk and we break it down for you. So if you really you don't want to learn it the way I did on the side of the road, you can watch a video and try and see what this looks like. But it's an article, if you go to Common Tread, it's how to attend your first motorcycle track day. And we really walk through like trailering, setting up a tent, taping off your lights. Like we went with street bikes. We didn't go with track prep bikes. We walk the bikes through tech inspection. We show you what it's like to show up to a track day and have to go through tech inspection. And, I think my chain was too tight and the guy was like, "Gotta loosen your chain a little bit, buddy." And I was like, okay.
Loosen your chain, buddy. In more ways than one.
And then we went on two different experiences, right? Like I had already done a couple of track days. So, I walked the audience through what it was like to maybe go through a class that's a little bit higher level to go out and do a track day. And then the colleague at the time, Alessandra, went through and she did like a beginner class with like a coach and everything else. And this was all just through a regular track day. So what we really wanted to do was kind of, debunk the mystery of a track day. And that gets back to what I said earlier. Like, I think sometimes the hardest part is just showing up and having the confidence to show up. And Alessandra at the time had never done a track day before. So she was on a Ninja 400 and, she got to walk through, and then we got some real world, feedback from her, as to what her experience was like. And I think it was interesting to watch her do it because she was very intimidated. She was a little bit nervous going out there. And at the end of the day, she stuck with it and she was like, this was, a lot of fun and I had a good time. And I think that was really the takeaway lesson, is that if you can get out there and just get over the hump, I've yet to meet someone who at the end of the day is like, man, that was miserable. Getting to ride a motorcycle as fast as I could, really didn't enjoy that. I think most of us, it's ingrained in us. It's ingrained that, we enjoy this. And I have another anecdote, but I'll leave it for later. So if you're what Zach and Jen and I are saying right now has intrigued you, make a little note. How to attend your first motorcycle track day is an article and a video over on Common Tread that I think you'd probably enjoy.
So I got a couple things that I want to. I'm thinking, Spurge, we should. This is a little bit insider baseball, but I think we should maybe combine topic 3 and topic 5. But before we do that, I have a question for you, Jen, which is.
Wait, before we do the question for Jen, we should probably do the ad for Motul.
Sure, that sounds good. Let's do an ad for Motul. Okie dokie. Back talking about track day stuff. And the question I was going to ask you, Jen, is you and I had talked about this before, sort of the intimidation factor of showing up at a motocross track day, and there's just no. It's not like, we were just saying how sport bike track days have evolved so much, right? You can get coaching and there's classroom sessions and there's this and there's all this structure and welcome to our, and there's going to be a buffet lunch for $20 if you want. Like, it's very.
And rules. There's a lot of rules.
It's an event, but at a motocross track day, sometimes it's just like a dude in a shack, and he's like $20 to get in, and then you go in, and then there's just other people riding around, and you don't know what to do, basically, right? And I assume you've experienced that to a certain extent.
Yeah, like Spurge said, it's almost like a no rules kind of format at most of the motocross tracks I've been to, and especially like road racing circuits are just so structured. There's so many gates and barriers and checkpoints in place. It's a very controlled environment, and motocross really isn't, at least in my experience. And there's kind of a little bit of a cultural difference between motocross track etiquette on the East Coast that I've experienced versus the West Coast.
Oh, okay.
Which is really fascinating too.
Well,
Like on
yeah,
the
talk
East
about
Coast
that.
when I was there, like there's normally like a track, like, only one track you can ride, or sometimes two. Like they don't have as many tracks to separate the different levels of skill or age or size of bike. So my experience on the East Coast was they did have a session format. So the smaller bikes could have 30 minutes on, and then all the big faster bikes would be 30 minutes on, and they do it that way. But so far here in SoCal, like I've not seen that structure at all. It's open practice. And that's what they call these days at motocross parks as well. It's called open practice. Whereas when you go to a road racing circuit, it's a track day. Our organization has come in, they have rented the facility from the track, and they have set up a structure, itinerary, schedule, all of that, right?
Right. And that's
Not so at a motocross track.
right. That's really the big structural difference, is that usually a track day for sport bikes is an organization who has rented the facility to host an event that is based on their own itinerary, whereas a motocross track day is usually just the track saying, yeah, you can ride around on the track now, and there's no other organization, there's no third party. It's just the track saying, track's open, if you give us money you can ride around.
Totally. And I mean, there's like a lot of pros and cons to this, in my mind. Like I joke with my husband all the time. Like my first time at motocross track, he's like, yeah, get some photos of me. I'm like, okay. And I'm like standing behind a wall, everything, because like when you go to road racing circuit, you don't get to just walk out on the track or cross the track or anything. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I just, I'm staying behind the wall. He's like, no, like go in the middle, go cross the track, go in the middle here and get this really sick photo of me in the apex, like get low and everything. I'm like, I could reach out and touch him as he flies by me in this corner on a motocross track. And it's not controlled environment like that. And
he's like, stand on top of the tabletop jump so that I can jump over.
Legit. That's how they do it at motocross tracks. And in a way that's beneficial too, because you'll see riders all the time cut out parts of the track. So they'll hit one jump and they'll pull over and they'll circumvent back and they'll session a jump to hone their skill. You can't do that at a road race track. Like you there's a very specific point where you get on, a very specific point where you get off, and you complete the lap. There's no making it up while you're out there. You know?
No stopping on the track, no cutting corners, so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So what are some things that really come to mind for someone, if someone was going to go to a track day, an open practice session, which is another interesting delineation, right? Open practice session suggests that there are liable to be racers there practicing, whereas track days on a road race or sport bike track day, a lot of times a track day includes almost no racers at all because they would go to a separate event. But if someone's going to go to a motocross track day at a track anywhere, they're just like, oh yeah, there's an open practice session at this motocross track. What are some kind of like high level stuff, like maybe 3 points or whatever, a handful of points that you would say, okay, this is going to be weird, but just do this one thing or whatever. I don't know. What are some pieces of etiquette that they could keep in mind?
Well, I mean, just ask questions. Like, don't be shy, because it's for everyone's safety that you understand, like, where to drive and park. Ask the gate person. They'll be happy to help you. Like, make sure you understand that, because even, like, the track I love to go to, Kahia, like, part of the road where you drive to go to the parking spot, it'll be part of the race course when they set up a starting gate and do racing. So if you're first time here, you'll be like, oh my God, I think I'm driving on the track right now, and you might wig out. I go there constantly and I still wig out sometimes. I'm like, am I putting someone in danger? So just ask the question at front desk, be like, oh yeah, how do I get to where we park? And then once you park up there, like, definitely take your time to watch each track and know which one is appropriate for you. And if you're not sure, like, ask a neighbor, ask a friend. Like, that's really good practice. And make sure you know what direction the track is going. I know this sounds like it should be really obvious, but I've seen it happen. Like, new riders come on and nobody's on the track and they start going in the wrong direction. And then people have to, like, wave them down, So don't be that guy or gal.
Right.
Be observant, ask questions. And I think from a safety aspect, if you haven't gone, sometimes I'll go to the track by myself. I might meet friends there or something like that. But if I'm there by myself, I don't have my husband or someone like that, trade emergency contact numbers with a neighbor or one of your friends there, so someone can help you if you do have an incident. I've seen so many riders that go down and they don't have a plan in action, and they're in the ambulance and they're taking off, and like we're looking at their pit set up for like who's gonna help this guy. Does he have a plan? Like, does his family know like he's gonna need some help, etc. So
Right.
I always
Yeah.
think it's a good habit to trade numbers with a neighbor. Just be like, oh, if something happens, like, could you call my husband? Could you call my wife? Or, whatever it is.
Right,
I like how you said help this guy, because usually the women are smarter and they've already done everything you suggested, and it's some guy that's like the ego has gotten the best of him.
Yeah.
So those would be the 3 tips for motocross track.
Yeah. That's great. What about asking to ride with someone? Like, I don't know. I feel like, especially coming from a road race background, I might be inclined to go up to someone who, they're not totally shredding the course, but they're definitely better at it than I am, and say like, hey, can I follow you, or can you follow me and tell me what I'm doing wrong? Like, is that something that people ever do, or would you get laughed out of the place if you asked that question?
I mean, I would call in on a friend.
Right.
To help me.
Not
with
a stranger.
That. Not a stranger. I mean, you could just try and follow strangers when you're out there on the motocross track. Just be careful, you're gonna get roosted.
Right.
Is the other thing about the motocross track. But I feel at the road racing track there's a little bit more of that community, whereas at the MX track I sometimes feel like I am amongst a bunch of strangers. Like, I don't show up at Kahia and it's the same people every time. There's so many different riders coming at different times. When I go out to the road racing track, and this might have to do with I'm really involved with one organization, right? Like, once you find a track day organization, you really enjoy what they do and you like those people, you keep coming back. And oftentimes it's going to be a lot of the same faces. So you build that rapport and you have that trust and community and support, and you would feel comfortable being like, hey, like, can you help me through these corners? Like, I'm still figuring it out, and they'll ride with you. At MX, it's a little bit more mercenary. I wouldn't say there's, I have my group of friends and we'll call each other and we'll ride, but there's days I go and none of those friends are there. So it's a little bit of everything.
I think it goes back to what, you guys had talked about a second ago here, where like when you go to a road racing track, it is an organization that is running out the track, and then they're hosting a track day for their members. So chances are you're a member of that organization because they offer discount rates and things like that. And you show up, and if there's 20 track days in a season from 3 different organizations, chances are you're going to the track day to which the organization is that you belong. Whereas if you go to an open practice, like Zach said, you might belong to that motocross track. Like, I know for NJMP, you become a member of the track for like discounted practice rates. So it's like $50 a day versus $70 a day.
That's the MX track at NJMP.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
So like you still can become a member of the track itself, but there's open practices on Sundays, Mondays, Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays. So like you might not see the same people. Maybe you go to a practice on a Saturday in, June, but you don't go again until a Wednesday in August, So it's one of those ones where you're probably not seeing the same people. Whereas if your track day organization is only hosting, 5 track days the entire season at NJMP, then, you might see them for 4 of those 5 track days, and you start to see the same people over and over again.
Yeah. True enough. Well, yeah, I think that breakdown of the MX track, and I guess because it is kind of the Wild West of open practice and sort of track day etiquette, things might be different depending on what region of the country or the world you're in, and what the track is and what the organization's like. And maybe there are MX track days that exist where it's like, oh, Russell's here and Russell will show you around if you want to, and he'll do individual coaching if you're like, who knows? I don't know Russell's life. The point is there might be they might go different ways in different places, but certainly I think that my impression, having been to 1, maybe 2 motocross track days in Southern California, is that first of all, it's very open and there isn't any real instruction. You just sort of expected to know what to do. And the level of riding is really high. The like regular old people that go to a track day or an open practice day at an MX track in Southern California are often very good at riding. And that is intimidating in itself, I think. So I don't know. I don't mean to take the wind out of anyone's sails, but it is something, if you do go to a track day in Southern California and you see people like clearing triples and like jumping 60 or 80 feet, and it's like some 60-year-old dude, and you're like, is this normal? No, not really. But in Southern California, it kind of is. There are people that are really, really good on motocross bikes.
I think this plays into the etiquette conversation a little bit, and I think this goes back to like, regardless of whether you're talking about an MX track day or a road racing track day, it's knowing your own ability and knowing what's going to be fun for you, right? Because, Zach,
Right.
you had made a comment earlier about like, oh, well, if you go to an MX track, you might be on the same track as a professional racer, which probably won't happen at a track day. And I want to disagree a little bit with that, in the fact that if you go to a street track day and you're in the C group, you're probably not going to be on the track with the racer. And if you're in the B group, you might not be on the track with the racer. But if you're in the A group, like I know at a lot of the track days that we do at NJMP, like a lot of the club racers come out and use the A group track days as an opportunity to practice.
Sure,
so I think that speaks more to the volume of like, when you go to a track day on road racing, there is a very organized structure, and even if you're going to the MX track, like if you know your own ability and you're looking at some dude hitting a triple, you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm in the right spot. Like, go over to the vet track or go to the youth track. And that's what I was commenting earlier. Like, I know my ability. If I'm going to do a track day at an MX track, like I'm looking at the youth track or I'm looking at the vet track. I'm not looking at the national track, because it's not going to be fun for me,
Yeah, agreed.
So-
Yeah, it's interesting how that split happens, kind of, right? Like if you go to a track day at whatever, like a major MX facility, it's almost like base the experience of the track that you have on which circuit you select. Whereas if you go to a track day at a road racing circuit, it's like the groups, it's all the same. Everyone's on the same track, but you're in
One
separate
track,
groups. You're in like what's that?
Yep, it's one track, and
Exactly.
split up your time. Yep.
Yeah. Whereas, so that is kind of an interesting delineation that I hadn't really thought about until we were having this conversation, to be honest, is that sometimes for off-road stuff, it's like, well, which set of jumps or which track would you like to do based on your ability? Whereas at a road racing track, it's more like, well, which group of people do you feel more comfortable with?
Well, I think the MX thing, it's like, your ability, the track dictates your ability. Like if you can't jump, 3 hills in a row, like you don't want to be on that track because it's hard. Whereas on a road racing track, your ability just delineates how fast you go, and you can go around the track just a little bit slower and still have a good time.
Right.
Whereas that might not be the case on the motocross side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes perfect sense. You can't hit a triple at like, I'll just go a little slower. That doesn't work.
Then it ends badly.
You could roll jumps. Like
sure.
I've gone
Absolutely.
at
That's
the end of
true.
the day when it's really quiet, I'll go roll the main track just so I could say I did it, but also like see like how much I need to progress before I try something like that.
Yeah.
But even with that said, like we know with dirt bikes, especially all of us here, like there's some obstacles on a dirt bike that you either have the ability or you don't, and you're not going to make it through, which is so interesting to me. Because on a street bike, on a street or a road race course, go as slow as you need and you'll still make it across this piece of asphalt, right? But
Exactly.
dirt bikes can get so gnarly in that you actually will not make it, depending on what the terrain is. And that's a big separator between the two disciplines.
Totally,
as
yeah.
well.
I think it's interesting in the fact that like it makes it easier sometimes. Like I don't like the idea, and we've talked about this in a previous episode, I think when Ari Henning was a guest, like the idea of MX is intimidating to me because like I don't know if I feel like flying 40 feet in the air, right? But like I like woods riding where like you're going up against trees and you're going through rock gardens or you're hitting like whoops, with branches 2 inches from your face. But it's harder to go through a whoop section if you're not carrying speed and standing up. It's harder to go through a rock garden if you're not just skipping across the top of the rocks. And I think that's where on the MX side, like you have to have a certain amount of ability to be able to comfortably tackle some of that stuff. Or maybe that's more of the enduro side. Maybe I'm translating too much of that over. But like you said, Jen, like if you're just cruising around a road racing course, even at slower speeds, you're probably having a great time. Because there's no other oncoming traffic, if nothing else, and you just are going around in direction and enjoying the curves,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I guess when it comes to pivot to road racing track days, or to sport bike track days and the etiquette there, like I feel less inclined to offer the same kind of advice that you did, Jen, about, whatever, trade contact information with your neighbor. I guess that, come to think of it, that's good advice regardless of the track that you're at. But there's so much structure at a road race track day, a sport bike track day, that I feel like the biggest piece of advice is to just ask questions. If you don't understand something, there's almost certainly a process for it, right? There's almost certainly a schedule or an arrow pointing you the right way that you just haven't seen, or a form that you haven't filled out, or something like that. I feel
or
like
staff walking around in pit
Right.
shirts and stuff. Like a lot of organizations are very professional now with their crew shirts and stuff like that. So you will be able to find help for sure at the track
right.
day.
And they should be welcoming. That's another thing that I think I'd like to point out about sport bike track days is that you shouldn't feel bad about asking questions. There should be, especially the staff at a track day, should be more than willing to answer any and all questions that you have about how to get on track and how to do things right. And, oh, wait, that one flag is like different if it's waving and when it's stationary. I don't remember what that was. Can you explain that again? Don't hesitate to ask those questions, because that's what the people are there for. And everyone there, including the fastest people on the track, frankly, should be encouraging to any new person going there.
And I would say along with that, like another piece of etiquette is that because they are so accommodating, because they are so willing to talk to you, because they are so willing to offer up the correct ways of doing things, you have to follow the rules, right? Like, like if there's no passing on the inside, you don't pass on the inside. If there's a yellow flag that comes up, and the rule for the yellow flag for the organization is that you have to pull over and wait. You know, like every track day has different sets of rules for what what they want you to do, and you have to follow those rules. I think, you know, another big piece, and you know, this goes back to the etiquette of your machine. Don't be the person who has a malfunction to the point where it ruins the track day for somebody else, right? Like, I'm not talking about if you accidentally go down, but like if you forget to screw your radiator cap on tight and you blow coolant all over the track and they have to shut the track day, you know, down until they can clean the track, or if you don't, you know, have your oil drain plug safety wired and it comes loose, like the little things like that, I think are easy to just, you know, take seriously. And too often not, you know, I've been to, you know, more than one track day where there was an issue because somebody just didn't have their machine prepared and it caused a problem, which, you know, affected everybody else at the track day. Yeah,
for sure. Well, I guess I like the idea of talking about some misconceptions now. I don't know if anything pops to mind, but we wrote down this question for ourselves, or sort of like, what are some misconceptions about being on the track or going to the track, or maybe expectations that people should have or should not have about what it's like to go to a racetrack. Does anything pop to mind for you guys? I just have one in my mind. Jen?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I see really exuberant, enthusiastic canyon riders come to the track, a track day, and think it's a race day, and it's not a race day. It's there for you to practice your skills and not scare or hit other people on the track. So I would say that was like the biggest one in my mind when we looked at this question, because I want people to feel safe and treat track days as an educational place. And listen, if you want to go to the absolute limit and you want to race people, there's a club racing organization that's there for you. So do that instead. Like, don't hurt some innocent track day goers who are just trying to figure it out for the first time. Like, if you know you just want to go fast and with as little limit as possible, go racing. You know?
Yeah. And also, this gets back to, like, know what group you're in. Like, don't put yourself in the C group if you're going to just terrify people. Like, you know, and not terrify people because you're learning, but terrify people because you have an ego. Like, check your ego at the door. And, you know, if you want to go try and be fast, then go join the A group and see how quickly you get your hiney handed to you.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, one that came up for me was the types of bikes that are expected to go to a track day, because I don't think that you need a sport bike to go to a track day, as evidenced by Jen's first track day on an old vintage Honda, and Spurgeon's first track day.
That was a race machine. Okay.
Oh, sorry, you're right. You're right. I apologize.
Totally
I apologize.
Joking.
That did have racing numbers right on there.
It had racing numbers on it before I was even racing.
Yeah. So I think that some people think that you need to have a full-on sport bike, or you need full-on hyper sport tires to go to a track day, and that is absolutely not the case. You can go to a track day on just about anything you want. There are even sometimes non-sport bike track days that exist. And if you have a cruiser or you have a touring bike, or you have a Goldwing, you have a BMW GS, you have whatever, and it doesn't feel like it's appropriate for a track day, there are days that are made just for bikes like that, for people who want to go and experience and ride around and have fun and sort of like learn some sort of safety techniques, or they just want to, hit a racing line, but they don't want to be a racer or have a race bike. Keep that in mind, that either the organization will probably accept you, or there might even be a track day just for people like that who don't have sport bikes.
There was an article on Common Tread years ago about an individual that took a Harley-Davidson Sportster to California Superbike School, and that was the bike that he had, and that was the bike that he attended the school on, and he had a great time, and he learned a lot, and
Right.
it went well,
Yeah.
I gotta say,
yeah.
there's a lot more of that going on now, especially with the rise of the bagger class in Moto America and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, the organization I work for, yeah, we've seen a handful of Harleys out. Now, some of them are racers who are getting ready for the next Moto America race, but there's at least 2 or 3 other Harleys out there.
Yeah.
Not racers. I think they are just
Right.
inspired. Like, they're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a new thing I haven't done on my bike yet. I'm going to go do that too.
Yeah, you've probably seen the same batch or a few people out there, Jen, but there are a few people that go out there on like old Dynas or something like that, and they race at Chuckwalla, and they race in some twins class or something like that, and they get their doors blown off, but they go do it, and I think it's awesome. I think it's so cool that they have this sort of these older Harleys that they've raised up with taller suspension, and they lean off them and they drag stuff and they race around and they sound awesome. And so I really, more than anything, applaud that attitude of like, cool, I'm just going to go do it, even though I don't necessarily have the right bike, because it's what I want to do and it's the bike I like, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I'd say just be in the right group for it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because you're going to frustrate some A riders if they've got that speed differential with you.
certainly.
Well,
yeah.
this gets back to one of the things that Zach said earlier, but like, I think once you're out on the track, right? Like, I think there's so many people that are willing to help you. Be open and receptive. Like, if you're going to do a track day, your number one reason for going to do a track day is to just get better, be a better rider. It's not to go fast. It's not to drag your knee. It's just to improve your skills. And if you're riding at a very slow level and you get to a slow level versus very slow, like, you've successfully completed a track day. And if you just go and have a good time and you don't make any improvements, you've successfully completed a track day. But I remember I was at a California Superbike School once, and the first thing they tell you is like, listen to us. Like, you're all going to come in here with varying levels, but like, when you have a coach tell you something, go out there and try it. And there was an individual in my group, because we were paired off, who just went out every single lesson, every single session, and just did what he wanted to do. And the instructor finally pulled him aside. He was like, hey man, like, you could have just gone to a regular track day and not listened to any coaching. Like, you're paying for coaching. Why aren't you listening? He's like, well, I just can do it faster the way that I know how to do it. And he's like, right, but like, what I'm trying to teach you is new things that will be a struggle at first, but if you can start to incorporate this into your riding, you're going to get faster than the way that you've previously been able to do it. And this individual just kept fighting, and eventually he crashed. And it was a bit contentious for a hot second, because it was like, hey man, like, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to crash. Like, you're fighting the system. So I think going out there and just having an open mind. And if there's a riding coach that pulls up behind you and it's like, hey, follow my line, follow the line and check it out. Maybe you're going to learn something. Maybe you can be a little bit faster. And that gets back to what Jen had mentioned at the beginning of this. Like, this isn't the street. So there are breaking points and there are lines, and you are going at such a speed that you would not be able to normally go on the street. And if you go out there and just try and ride around the track, you're not going to have a good time. But if you can go out there and you can look at the lines and you can look at where the cones are and the arrows are, and you can kind of find your breaking points and your turn-in points, you're going to have a great time. And that's what, if you're in a C group, you're going to have somebody you can follow behind. You can learn what those lines are and you can follow that flow, and you're going to have a great time at the end of it. So I think going in with an open mind, being honest about your ability and not, just leaving the ego at the door, it's so much more fun.
Yeah, mindset's so important. And like you said, and there is a big difference, I think, between like a regular track day and then a dedicated school, like California Superbike or YCRS, or name them. There's some, they're much pricier, but they will help your riding so much more. And then you go in with that mindset, I'm going to go slower today than I probably normally would on the track, but I'm going to absorb so much more from it.
Right.
And I got to say, like, when I go to like a regular track day, I make like 3 points I'm going to try and work on each session. But at the end of the day, I always give me that one session where I'm like, just go ride, Jen. Like, don't stress about your breaking point or if you did this right or that right. And I think that's always, like, for me, such a great way to end the track day, is to allow myself to just fully enjoy it again and not have that stress of, am I improving enough or learning enough? Like, just go out there and have fun in some corners again. That's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, stay connected to what what's fun about it to you, I guess.
I think that's interesting, Jen, because I think I would even go fewer than that for myself. Like, I try to, like, for each session, it's like, what's the one thing that I'm focused on in this session, right? Like, because I think sometimes we get too caught up in, like, okay, well, body position, and like, okay, well, where am I looking? Where are my eyes? And am I in my screwdriver approach to the throttle the right way? And I think for a lot of people, I was talking about this with Zach the other day, like, I try to treat the first session, and I think this is probably a good tip for a lot of people, because I've been guilty of this. I've low sided in the first session of the day on cold tires because I didn't give myself enough time to let the tires warm up. The first session of the day is just warm up time. Like, you have an entire day. Don't be like Spurge and wipe out in the first session of the day and have to spend 3 or 4 sessions putting your bike back together. Like, just go out. And I told Zach, one of the things that I did learn that I really like that California Superbike School does is they don't allow you to use your brakes for the first session. You put the bike in third gear, and you just have to go slow enough that when you roll off the throttle, you can just kind of float through the corners. And I think it's something that I've carried with me that I try to use now in all of my first sessions of the track, where I put the bike in third gear and I'm only using my throttle hand. I'm really not trying to use the brakes, and I'm just letting myself kind of like work through the corners to get a feel for the bike, to get a feel for the day. And it does help when you start to turn the speed up to have that kind of slower perspective. And that's what then session 2 and 3 and 4 and subsequent sessions are good for.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I have a warm-up mantra before every track day, and it's warm up the tires, warm up the bike, and warm up the body. I repeat that in my head, and when I go out there, I make sure I'm very focused on that. Because, like you said, Spurge, cold tires. I mean, we've all heard the story. It's happened to almost everybody. So don't be that rider. Like, definitely give your tires time to warm up. And warming up the bike is so crucial on my R6 Like, I have like a little temperature chart where I check. It's on the gas tank, so I could reference it fast. But like, after that first lap or two on the front straightaway, I always look in the same place and make sure my temperature is where it should be. I don't want it overheating, or if anything looks weird about it, I'm coming in because that bike needs to be looked at. And then warm up the body. Yeah, like, get limber. Like, remember to like keep your weight in the toes. Like, all that body position stuff. Like, if it's been a couple months, like, it's gonna be for me. Like, I'm gonna do my first track day for the season next month, and I'm like, there's a lot of cobwebs to shake off. So warm up the body too. So I think that's a really good one for any rider out there.
I like that too, because I think it plays right in line of, like, if you're having a rough session, if you're blowing corners and like the session just isn't jiving with you, throw your hand up and get off the track. Like, just know your own ability, and know, like, hey, you know what? I made one too many mistakes this session. Like, I'm going to call it. I'm pooped. I'm tired. I need to go hydrate. I think that's a good etiquette thing as well, is just knowing yourself and when it's time to maybe take a break.
Right. And if you haven't been to a track day before, you might not know that the afternoon sessions are often suspiciously sparsely attended, and it's because people burn out early. They go so hard in the first 3 or 4 sessions or whatever, and then by the time the 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m. session rolls around, they're just like, oh my god, I'm just too tired. So you, especially if you've never done it before, you haven't done a lot of them, it's easy to tucker yourself out, and it can be a lot to ride all day. So that goes back to the point of sort of like warming it up and trying to take it easy in the first session. I always have to tell myself that. It's really hard, I think. But it's such a good thing to keep in mind.
I remember the first track day I did, and I had no idea that the sessions were only 15 minutes long. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, I want to go out there for like an hour. Like, I want to conquer the track, like 15 minutes. And I remember, like, halfway through, I was like, this isn't over yet. Oh my God. I'm so tired. Like, I'm sore. I'm tired. I'm cramping. Like, why isn't this over yet? I think it's really important for people to know that, like, if you've never done this before, sessions are typically about 15 minutes in time. And then you get like a 45-minute break until it's your time to go out again. And 15 minutes is plenty of time on a racetrack. Like, you are good after 15 minutes out there until your next session is ready to go.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. Well, I think it might be time for a final piece of advice. If we go around the horn and sort of, I don't know, is there one more thing you would like to implant in the minds of people who either are already attending track days or are considering doing it? Jen Dunstan?
For any riders out there that are thinking about doing it, like, just do it. Do it at least once.
Nice.
To say you've done it, and also I think you're really going to enjoy it. That would be my advice to anyone on the fence about it, and to like current existing track day riders. What would I say to them? I don't know. Like, keep
lean
doing
over
the thing.
more.
Keep doing the thing, and keep being humble. That's what I always try to remind myself of. Like, there's always someone else faster somewhere in the universe. So stay humble and keep learning out on the track.
Absolutely. That's sound advice. What about you, Spurge?
No, you, Zach. You go.
I go first. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, the last thing I want to touch on was it was a question that we had posed in the itinerary for this podcast, but we never really touched on. I think it's a good thing to actually just to sort of end on for me, which is whether you're going to track for the first time or the 10th or 20th or 100th time, ask yourself why you're going. And it is fun. That is an overarching thing that you will find or have already found about going to a motocross track day, to a sport bike track day, whatever. It's really fun. But I think it's good to ask yourself why you're going and what you're trying to accomplish, especially if you've never done it before. But even if you have, what are you trying to get out of it? Because that will help you align your mind with what you're, if you really just want to drag knee and that's what you want to do, well then, you should talk to people or work with people about, body position and corner speed. And if you really just want to like learn how to be a better emergency braker for the street, I just feel like I don't know how fast my bike can stop. Well, cool. Like someone can talk about that and like, really focus on that when you ride around the track, like using the brakes. That's a good thing to learn how to do. But if you have something specific in mind, I think it can help you focus on honing a certain skill and ultimately be more rewarding than just having fun. Not that you need more than that, but that's my last piece of advice.
That's awesome. And I, for what it's worth, I agree. And I think that, both of you are on the track here. The only thing that I really want to, or that was a pun that wasn't even intended. You're on the right track here. You're nailing it. You're hitting it home.
Hey-o.
But I think mine is just in general for all the motorcyclists that have gotten to this point in the podcast. If you're still with us, just go into any of this with an open mind. Don't go in with your mind made up. And whether that is a track day for the street or an off-road day, or it's, just trying a different motorcycle than the one that's in your garage, there's so much that can be enjoyed by just approaching things with an open mind and not being worried about embarrassing yourself. I've learned a long time ago that like I'm going to crash. I'm going to do something stupid. I'm not going to ever be the fastest person out there. And that's okay because I'm having fun. And if you can go into things with an open mind, that's just, it transforms your attitude. I remember, I'll leave us with this little anecdote here. Is I was at a track day once and a guy was there on a Honda CB 1100. And for those of you that are not familiar, it's like a kind of like a vintage looking modern inline four air cooled engine.
So that's the new CB 1100. That's like it's a retro. It kind of looks like the old CB. Gotcha. Yep.
It was a retro, and the individual, I think he wrote it there, but then he like rented a bike. So like he rented like a sport bike, and he was talking. He's like, yeah, I tried to get my friends to come, but like my friends just put me down for it. They were like, oh, well, why would you want to go do that? We're not racers. And he was like, well, I just want to try it. Like, it just seems like something, he was an older gentleman. I'd say he's probably in his like late 50s or early 60s. And he left at the end of the day just like, this is the most fun I've ever had in a motorcycle, and
Nice.
And he didn't let his friends get him down. His friends weren't being supportive. And he said, you know what, I'm just going to go do this anyway. I'm going to go do it. And I went as a stranger and I had a great day. And he's like, I don't want to be a motorcycle racer. I just wanted to come and try this and see what it was like. And now I can't wait to come back again. And I think that's what I'm talking about when I say be open-minded. Don't be afraid to put yourself in a situation that might not be comfortable for you, because Zach and Jen and myself and everybody else here at RevZilla, we've all been beginners at some point in time. And getting there, just showing up, is 75% of the battle.
Well, on the topic of not listening to your friends, I say we play the Rev Trivia game. where
I
we
think
listen
it's
to
time.
an engine sound and try to decipher what the make and model of the machine is. So Jen, you know how this works, right? We're going to listen to an engine sound for 20 or 30 seconds, and everyone plays along at home, and you just sort of we'll spitball it. And if we can't get it, we'll give some hints. Spurgeon, I have not heard this before either. We're all going in blind. Producer Chase has provided the sound, so I say we jump in. Let's listen to it. You guys ready?
I'm
Let's
ready.
do it.
Okay. So,
Raspy.
yeah. I kind of like, I don't know. I kind of think like flat. It feels like it's got too much of a performance. It definitely doesn't have stock pipes, whatever it is. It's like it's got some kind of pipe. It's way too kind of like raspy and backfirey for a stock bike.
My gut wants to say V twin, but it sounds so performance oriented.
No, it's not a twin. It's a 4. It's a V4 or a flat 4 or a flat 6. Like, could it be like a Honda Valkyrie or something?
Jen?
Any guesses?
I honestly, it sounds V twin to me in this
Yeah.
setup here.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
But
I'm gonna listen again.
yeah, maybe you're onto something with V4 then. I feel.
Yeah,
I do
maybe
feel
V4.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I hear more cylinders than 2. So but
Yeah.
but,
All right. Good call. The cadence. Yeah, you're right. The cadence there
Yeah.
is a bit quicker.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a
but-
V twin that's idling really fast. Is what.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Gosh. What's the?
You're right. It
I
sounds
don't-
so raw though. Like it's not like a RSV4 or anything like that. That would sound way more refined. You know what, guys? The other problem with this game is I try and think of all the engine sounds I know, and it's from the perspective of sitting on it with a helmet on and everything. I feel like for a spectator standing to the side of the bike, it would be a whole different
Yeah,
experience. So,
yeah.
like, this is a tough one.
We've seen this before from other guests. It's called making excuses for not knowing. Yeah.
Okay, so I think everybody try to issue a guess now. If you're in your car or you're at work, say it out loud to yourself. Gosh,
Do we
I don't know.
want to do a first hint, or do you guys have a guess before I give
No,
out the
I
first
think
hint?
I think it's fun to do a guess beforehand, just to get the ball rolling. All right, I'm happy to do it. I'm gonna go 1984 Honda Goldwing Flat 4 GL 1200 GL 1100 GL 1200, and it's breathed on. Boy, this sucker's got all the performance stuff on it you could want. I actually think it might be a V4, but I'm gonna go with Flat 4 right now.
Jen?
Oh man. Oh, this is hard. I mean, yeah, it's a V4, but it's like straight pipe or something. Something's really
I know.
weird
Well,
and raw about this thing.
Maybe it's like a freaking RSV4 that's the track RSV4 or something, right? I don't know.
So, someone cut the pipe off of it, and that's what I'm gonna have to put up for a first guess.
All right, I'm gonna stick. You've convinced me, Zach. I like V4. I'm gonna go mid '80s Honda Magna.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is a cruiser that somebody has put like Vance and Hines or some slip on there, and this is raspy and it's gurgling and burgling, but it's you got me on V4, so I'm with you.
Nice. You know what? I'm changing my guess. I'm going Yamaha VMAX.
Oh.
Yamaha VMAX 1700cc V4
That kinda adds up.
performance oriented, and it's a perfect bike to put pipes on because people. So what's the hint, Spurge?
All right, so the first hint is 4-cylinder.
That's the whole hint.
That's the whole hint.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and go to the second hint because we've all put our guesses in.
We've all put in 4-cylinder guesses.
Let's go to the second hint. Oh, Jen might be the only one on track.
Oh, really?
Hint number 2 is Italian 4-cylinder.
Ah.
Interesting. Okay.
So
Let
that
me
could
listen
be
See
the
again.
that coming. I did not have a lot of confidence in that first answer. I mean, what else is there?
Yeah,
That's
it's got-
Italian.
It's gotta be a.
It's got to be
not
a V. It's not
it's
an
not a
inline four,
Panigale.
though. Yeah, it's got to be.
It's not a Ducati. I mean, it's not a Ducati V4. I don't think.
Really?
Unless it's a Desmo Sedici. Even that sounds different. This sounds like an Aprilia to me. It sounds like a 60 degree.
This
or
has
65,
kinda,
whatever it is.
It has the bark of like a MoGP bike for sure.
You think our producer Chase really threw us for a loop with a MotoGP bike after the shenanigans he pulled last time? I will hang him up by the rafters in the studio if that's the case. All right.
Okay.
Hint
Well, yeah,
number-
I think we're all agreed on Aprilia Tuono Factory or like Aprilia RSV4. I don't know.
I have a feeling that producer Chase is getting strung up after this. Hint number 3, the final hint, is Max Biaggi.
Okay, so RSV4.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait.
I mean, that's my final guess. If the final hint is Max Biaggi, then you have to go. He won the World Superbike Championship on an Aprilia RSV4,
Okay.
so that's what I'm going with.
The answer is
With an excuse me, Akrapovic pipe.
it's not. You were close. It's an aero pipe, and it is a 2020 Aprilia Tuono. So this is not a MotoGP bike. I don't have to string Chase up. It is a 2020 Aprilia Tuono. Jen, I would say that, given all things
Yeah,
considered,
absolutely.
you win the game.
Yeah, 100%.
Do I get a high side, low side T-shirt?
Oh, we'll
Yeah.
get you.
Do
We'll
you
get
not
you
have
two.
one already?
Yeah.
I don't have one yet. Come on,
well, then
guys. I
we'll-
left so many comments under so many pseudonyms. Come on.
Oh, that's you leaving all those Apple podcast reviews?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
So
All
we
right.
want to take a second and say thank you to Slant911 for
Yeah.
sending in an email. Slant, go ahead and shoot us your address where you would like your T-shirt sent to, because you are the winner. We picked your engine sound. That's a good note for anyone out there listening to the engine
Yes.
sound game. We would love for you to shoot us your engine sounds to highside, lowside at RevZilla.com. Give us, a nice idle, a few good cracks of the throttle, and then letting it idle again. Clips need to be about 30 seconds long, and you can do it with your cellular device. But again, the winner today was Slant911. Thank you for sending in an audio clip of your 2020 Aprilia Tuono with an Aero slip-on. And that thing sounds awesome.
It does. Sounds mean.
That's fire breather.
I didn't. I wasn't prepared. And thank you to you, Jen Dunstan, for being our guest host today, and for dominating the engine rev trivia game. Good job.
Plot twist. Who saw that coming? Thanks, guys. It's always so much fun.
Until next time, Jen, we will see you on the road.
See ya.
Always a pleasure having Jen Dunstan on the program, but it's not over yet for you listening audience. We now get to move into the T-shirt giveaway portion of the podcast. We're going to read
How
some
do people
viewers'
win
comments.
a T-shirt, Spurgeon? Tell them how they win a T-shirt.
Well, you got to start by subscribing where you listen and watch, but then more importantly, head over to Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a review. Let us know your thoughts. It helps make the show better, and it helps people find the podcast. And the winner today is an individual named FZ Blown Mind. Zach, what did FZ Blown Mind review that left us so willing to give them a T-shirt?
Do you think that's a given name, by the way?
I
First
think
name
the-
FZ, last name Blown Mind.
That's the Lord's name. Yes, it's given in the
Okay.
church. Yes.
All right. So the subject was, that's some highly interesting riding talk.
TSHIRT is
For
the
those
acronym.
for those of you keeping track, the first letters of each of those words, that's some highly interesting riding talk. TSHIRT. The review goes on to say, their silly humor is really terrific. They spend hours inquiring riders' tales. They share hilarious interview, riding tips. Trails, speed, how inconveniences rattle trips. Total shebang. Hear incredible RevZilla topics. This show helps influence riders today. So initially I thought this was some sort of
Poem?
horrible poem that had just really gone sideways at some point, and I felt bad for the person who wrote it. But then I realized I was not smart enough to get what was going on, because every single line that I just read, their silly humor is really terrific. They share hilarious interview riding tips, total shebang, hear incredible RevZilla topics, so on and so forth. Every single one of those lines they wrote, TSHIRT.
What does it spell, Zach?
T-shirt.
T-shirt.
FZ Blown Mind. FZ Blown Mind went on to say that they like the podcast and they appreciate what we do, which is a blessing in
They said
itself.
it was genuinely their favorite podcast of all time.
Okay. So they gave us a compliment, which is nice. But the point is, this horrible, horrible poem turned out to contain a
creative approach.
Right. 6 or 7 acronyms in itself that all spell out T-shirt. So we had fun with that, and we appreciate your creativity and the time you put into it. So FZ Blown Mind, you're the T-shirt winner. Please send your size preference and your mailing address to highsidelowside@RevZilla.com, and we will make sure that you get yourself a T-shirt.
So we are now going to move on to the high side, low side comments section of the podcast. These come in from email, comments on YouTube, what have you. The first one is Duck Shaw, who wrote us an email in, and she says, I'm 25 years old. I'm from Singapore. Just binged the entire show in anticipation of her first motorcycle and season 6. So God help you for having to listen to Zach and I for, hours on end.
Again,
just nobody wants that.
No. Again, I think if you've binged in a whole season, you should probably get a CAT scan or see a doctor or something. Just
make sure you're
good
okay
for your health.
Yeah,
exactly. But thank you so much.
Goes on to say, I bring you a question inspired by both the end of last season's celebration of more female riders and Zach's Daily Rider comment on the Vespa Primavera's step-through design to facilitate skirt wearing. I assume that Zach's comment was made for modesty reasons. However, it got me thinking, hypothetically, of course, basically, what do you do about riding in a skirt, right? Like, is there something here for impact protection with no abrasion protection enough? Can she wear knee pads with the skirt? Like, what are the thoughts about wearing a skirt and then scraping bare skin on tarmac? Are there solutions that work?
Right. So the upshot of the question is, I like wearing skirts hypothetically, and I'm not concerned about my legs showing in general, but I am hypothetically, again, very concerned indeed about safety and not inclined to scrape said bared skin on the tarmac. Are there solutions that work? Spurgeon and I should probably kick off this answer by saying that we are not the foremost connoisseurs of motorcycle riding skirts in the world. I don't think that we know the most. of anyone.
You speak for yourself.
Okay, I apologize.
I'm not gonna.
Spurgeon lived in Scotland for a while, for those who don't know, and he often rode in a leather kilt. So
exactly.
Just
there's
put that
nothing
image in
more
your mind.
abrasion resistant than a leather kilt.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the things that's become really popular in motorcycling is women's leggings. They're abrasion-resistant leggings that have a lot of stretch to them. So, as I was reading your comment, and some of them do have pockets for armor, but as I was reading your comment, I immediately thought of, if you just go to RevZilla.com and type in leggings, you get hit with Oxford leggings, Street and Steel, Alpine Stars, Revit. There's just no shortage of leggings right now for women, and that's my recommendation for you. You can put a pair of leggings on, still wear a skirt, and it would probably still look fashionable.
Right. We think anyway. What we know about fashion anyway, and I think that there is no real way to cover up skin from hitting asphalt without covering it up realistically. So as for abrasion resistant skirts, I can't help but suggest a leather skirt. I don't know how that fits into your closet or your personal sense of style. But if you were to wear a leather skirt with some of these abrasion resistant leggings, you would potentially increase your abrasion resistance should you fall off said scooter.
She then goes on to say that, she's not talking about herself. She's talking about her friend.
No, asking for a friend. Exactly.
Yeah, asking for a friend. And she also, Duckshaw, if you're listening to this, your comment after that, where you called your friend a name that we're not going to repeat on air,
word, yeah.
We all laughed our asses off at that. So, we had a good laugh in the pre-production meeting about this.
We did. Well, to kind of sum it up, Daksha from Singapore, this is an awesome question, and I hope that our answer gave you some direction. And I also very much hope that your first motorcycle and your first motorcycle experience is good, and that we are very happy to hear that you're concerned about safety. And so we hope that it all goes well. Keep us posted on how it goes.
Do you want to read the second comment for the
Sure,
day?
sure. Yeah, I suppose it's my turn. High side, low side comment number 2 comes in from Grant via electronic mail. That's email for short. Grant says, I would like your views on the following subjects of much debate on the internet. 1, trail braking, which as far as I'm aware is not taught in the MSF course. Safety benefits of trail braking, blah, blah, blah. Number 2, covering the front brake most, if not all of the time. And number 3, pros and cons of adjustable front brake levers, the ease of installation, and your favorite products available on RevZilla. Regards, Grant, electronic mail. So there are a few stages to this, Spurge. There's basically, what do you think about trail braking? What do you think about covering the front brake? And what do you think about adjustable front brake levers? Answer them in any order.
Fans of all of them.
Right.
And I think we picked this comment because it ties in with the track day episode.
Yeah.
But trail braking is really, for those of you that aren't familiar, it's carrying braking into the corner and then rolling, as you're rolling off, letting go of the brake, you're coming on to the throttle. And it's a real smooth motion that takes a little bit of time to master. Then going into covering the front brakes and adjustable levers is all kind of carrying into that. I would say that learning how to trail brake is something that is a great skill to master, but it's also something that it's probably not top on the list of things to do as you learn how to ride on the track or the street. However, covering the front brake and adjustable levers, I think is, and I think this is up for debate, but I am someone that likes to ride with a finger over that front brake lever, because in the split second, especially if you're riding on the street, that a deer jumps out or a car pulls out,
right,
for you to go from throttle to brake and then pull is a little bit of a delay than just quick tapping back on that throttle, whether it's 1 or 2 fingers. I've just trained myself now, and if you see photos of me riding, almost always I have that front brake covered. And then there is no, as far as like pros and cons for adjustable levers, I don't think there are any cons. Personally, I think that adjustable levers are a necessity and a must-have on motorcycles, because I have big hands and I want my lever further away from me. I hate a brake lever that's too close. Absolutely can't stand it. And subsequently, if you have smaller hands and a brake lever is too far away for you to comfortably pull it back, then you have to take your hand off to kind of reach up and pull it in. And that's not
That's
safe
no good
either.
Yeah.
So there are, in my opinion, no cons to adjustable levers, only pros. Zach, what do you think?
Well, I would just say that the one con of an adjustable brake lever, if your bike does not already have it, is that you have to buy it and install it. So there's a cost and some work that has to be done. But in general, I agree that adjustable front brake levers are great. And if you are willing to experiment with it and spend the money on it, then you should do that. Favorite products available on RevZilla? I'm not super familiar. Spurge, do you have any particular adjustable levers come to mind when Grant asked that question as far as products? Or
the ones that I think that I like the best, and I just want to make sure I have the name right because it's an acronym here. The top tier is obviously Brembo, and they've got some fantastic levers. I think some simpler ones are AG. I want to say AGV or CRG.
Okay.
And I want to say AVG or AGV, but I'm sorry, ASV. ASV,
that sounds familiar.
That's better.
Yep.
So CRG and ASV are probably my two favorites that I would recommend taking a look at.
Good stuff. Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about trail braking, Grant, is what Spurgeon sort of mentioned, which is that's a great thing to learn at a track day. That's a perfect place to get instruction on that kind of thing and to kind of understand being on the, when you're riding straight up and down and you get on the brakes, as you lean into a corner, you need to release the brake slowly. The more lean angle you have, you can brake, but you have to learn that skill. And I think that's a great thing to learn at a track day. So good tie-in with the rest of the content here today.
And I think that's kind of our wrap-up theme for the episode today, right? Like we've been trying to do this wrap-up moment of like, what have you learned? And I think track days, regardless of whether it's off-road or on-road, is a great place to practice skills that will make you better as a motorcyclist as a whole. Whether it's on a racetrack or it's on the street, a track day is a great place for riders out there to practice these skills that will make you, feel more accomplished. Wouldn't you say, Zachary?
Absolutely. I hope that you learned a thing or two in this podcast, and I hope that you had fun listening to the sort of tales of our track day experiences, and Jen was able to shed some light on some stuff that I thought was really useful. So yeah, I think my big takeaway is that at Spurgeon's first track day and at Jen's first track day, I was in the back of their mind one way or another.
It's true.
Isn't
And you
that a
still are
strange
to this day. I don't go to sleep at night without you being in the back of my mind one way or another.
Sure. I'm rarely in the front of anyone's mind, but always in the back. So a friendly reminder to send us your engine sounds to highside, lowside at RevZilla.com with the year, make, and model and modifications on your motorcycle. About a 30-second clip of the bike starting up, revving a couple times, and shutting off. And if we use it, we will send you a t-shirt. And of course, a call to action to go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review. If we get a kick out of it, or if you're especially flattering to us, we might just send you a t-shirt as well.
And there you have it, folks. Shoot those comments over to highside, lowside at RevZilla.com. Leave us a comment on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. And until next time, Zach Quartz and Spurgeon Dunbar are signing off. See you, everybody.